Hi, everybody. Well, first of all, we would really like to thank you and thank WWP for letting us be here. Our workshop, as Anna said, is titled Designing Evidence-Based Strategies to Address the Specific Risk Factors of IPV Perpetrators. And we were also our team. We are also with Marisol Lila, but she unfortunately she wasn't able to attend. But she really would like to tell us that she's sorry for not attending, and she would like to do that, but she's not able to attend. So first of all, we will introduce the topic, and then we will tell you more things of what we are doing. Well, you know that perpetrator programs, the interest in evaluating the effectiveness is rising in the last years, and reviews of the effectiveness of perpetrator programs have found mixed results. We have positive but moderate effects on reducing recidivism, which is at the end the last objective we have, like the main one. And we've been like the scientific community has been trying to ascertain like which are the main challenges we are facing that hinder the effectiveness of perpetrator programs. And what we found is high dropout rates, that we know that they are really high, low levels of personality responsibility attribution. So they usually they are resistant and they deny their responsibility for their violent acts. Then low treatment adherence, and as I was saying, resistance to the program, and low levels of motivation to change. We are also facing one really important challenge, that is the lack of individualized intervention programs specifically tailored to participants' risk factors. We know that perpetrator programs are usually group-based, so sometimes it's really difficult to individualize treatment and to adjust it to the risk factors of the participants. So among the risk factors, the main ones for IPV in perpetrators, we found previous mental health issues, sociodemographic characteristics, sometimes immigrant status or any other sociodemographic characteristic. They've usually or often they have experienced childhood violence, like they were exposed to family violence, or they suffered violence in their childhood. They also usually have experienced stressful life events. They have history of trauma or trauma symptomatology, and sometimes almost half of the participants we have in the perpetrator programs, they present substance use problems. So this is important to consider, to analyze, and to really look into it, because we know that high-risk IPV perpetrators, they are more likely to drop out from treatment, more likely to reoffend, and more likely to perpetrate more severe violence. In this line, a recent systematic review with meta-analysis showed that programs for perpetrators that adhere to the well-known risk, need, responsibility principles showed better outcomes than the more traditional one-size-fits-all intervention approach. So then we can see that the literature is stating that adjusting to participants' risks and needs and being responsive to them can be more effective than just giving a generalized approach.
Okay, so talking about the risk needs responsibility framework, it's a method of tailoring those intervention formats according to an individual's risk levels, but also its criminogenic needs and responsibility factors. It is therefore essential to implement and develop reliable measures to assess those aspects. This treatment approach, the treatment of intensity based on this approach is based on individual's risk. So the higher risk, the highest intensity treatment. And as Christina says, this approach differs from the one-size-fits-all, that is the most common intervention approach, by providing principles for organizing the delivery of the intervention, such as more individual sessions or more phone calls, that is tailored to the individual needs. These risk assessments could guide perpetrator programs to develop specific strategies sensitive and responsive to participants' specific needs and risks. So that's why it is important to identify participants' risk and protective factors. At this point, we have two approaches in order to achieve this goal. The risk need responsibility approach, that is the model we are talking about, but also the instigating, impelling, and inhibiting model. So the conclusion is monitoring, identify risk factors and implementing evidence-based practices that address these factors could improve participants' positive outcomes at the end of the intervention and help to reduce the IPV perpetrator. For example, in that recent systematic review, the risk need responsibility treatments were associated with a 26% reduction in IPV recidivism, while the traditional treatments were only associated with a 70%.
Yeah, so now we have prepared for you an activity. You will form groups and you will need to read the real case information that Anna sent you just before the workshop by email.
And also now in the chat. Both
Great.
via email and now in the chat.
On the chat. Great, thank you. That really helps. Yes. So I will. Great. So then, sorry, I was admitting people who were in the waiting room. Great. So we will form 5 working groups. Each group should choose a spokesperson. Okay, you have in the PDF all the information to know what you have to do, but just for you to know, just please start reading the case. That's a real case with, of course, every name and every important data, sensitive data has been changed. And all you have to do is, for now, is just to identify which are the most important risk factors you can you can identify of these participants. The risk factor that you think that needs to be addressed in the perpetrator program. Okay, so any factor that requires further attention to tailor the intervention to the participant risk and need. So you just have to write down the identified risk factors. One possibility is that you identify 3, the 3 main ones, and then others, right? And I think that's all. If anyone has any questions, you can ask. Is everything clear?
So maybe 20 minutes in the breakout rooms, just so you.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
No, so you.
Yes.
No need. You have 20 minutes. Are people already being moved there? Okay.
That's great.
So there's Rhiannon, Matthew. Rhiannon, are you there?
They were both assigned to groups.
Rhiannon, Matthew, could you let us know if you've received Okay. So just Terry, are you there? Also, we didn't mention people in the breakout rooms can share their screen also if they can't access the file. So I'll just add that to the.
So now they are all in the rooms, right? Working.
No, Rhiannon and TF. I think
Rhiannon,
that's
There's
Terry
yeah,
two
doing
that
that, but
no.
yeah.
Yeah, there are two. Okay.
If you're courageous, Nora, you could pause the recording. So I have less editing to do. If you remember. You're so good, Nora.
We have a list.
So I think that's everybody back with us. So.
Great. So we would really like to listen to you, your proposals. Which are the risk factors you have identified in this participant? So please, now the spokesperson do toast. It would be really nice if you could tell us which are your conclusions on the main risk factors of this participant. So, for instance, room 1, the spokesperson of, yeah.
Sorry, I think we was room 1. So yeah, so our main risk factors were high levels of stalking, so suicide, quite a lot of suicidal cessations. There was the continued escalation of threats made. There was high risk in the fact that his economic status and his medical issues, he was in a sort of like a thought process of, well, I've nothing to lose by behaving in the way I'm behaving. There had been some breaches of restraining orders already. There was talk of where he was. His only support network was actually his actual ex-partner, which was a massive risk, and quite high risk around his thoughts and his thought processing of the information he had around his child and the gender issues, what he was being of his child, not understanding that situation. In fact, we could have written a full list of risks actually for this individual, in this case.
Okay, so great, thank you so much. You really did really well. So if you had to choose one main risk factor you would definitely address in the perpetrator program, which one would you choose?
Oh, I don't know if we've got onto that bit, but if I make a suggestion, then my colleagues who was in the room probably may agree or disagree. I think that the stalking and the suicidal cessation talk will
Okay,
be quite high on the agenda.
great. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Then any other spokesperson, please?
I can go next. I'm not sure what group we were in, but we identified much of the same issues as just been said. A huge list. We really struggled to narrow it down to 3, but similar around his attitudes, his thinking around his domestic abuse, his current unstable situation, living kind of a general life situation. So an unstable living situation, being unemployed, his financial situation, substance misuse, his mental health issues and anxiety, his health condition, including memory loss and issues around cognitive functioning. His co-parenting relationship with his partner was a big one that we were concerned about. Yeah, the nature of his abuse, the fact that it's around intimidation, threats, it verged, there's a crossover onto sexual elements and jealousy, high levels of jealousy. His suicidal thinking and the fact there was a suicide attempt very recently, just 3 months ago. Support network, childhood trauma, loads and loads. One of the things that we thought would need to be worked on immediately, really imminently actually, is his level of engagement with the programme and the fact that he's been quite destructive in group. And what does that say about his motivation and his engagement and how he's affecting the other people in the group? So we would have to have conversations with him about that and think actually how do we manage this person? How do we deliver a programme to him?
Yeah, thank you so much for your contribution, Diane. Again, if you had to, or the main ones, like the 3 main ones or the main one, which one would you choose?
Oh, Diane, I was too quick. I'm sorry, I muted you. I was being too efficient. I apologize.
That's okay. I think if we were looking at 3, we'd be looking at his level. Obviously, his level of engagement would need to be looked at, but included in that, just his general attitudes and thinking towards his behaviour. We thought his current situation as well, stabilising his current situation. And I don't know, co-parenting came up quite high, as well as his kind of substance misuse, mental health, suicidal ideation. So I still haven't narrowed it down.
Okay, thank you so much for your contribution. Then next spokesperson of the next room.
So I can go next.
Great.
We also have a really long list of both static and dynamic factors, and it's something that other colleagues already spoke about. The thing that I think that wasn't mentioned, or I didn't catch it, was that he plans to come back to live with his ex-partner, so that could be a risk, while he's in the process of separation with current partner. We were also talking about his health condition and the fact that that's not treated and that he's experiencing physical pain, and combined with poor emotion management and everything that could also be additional factor, that he had experiences of domestic violence in his primary family. And I think that other things are mentioned. Obsessive behavior, that's connected also with stalking. And we didn't have enough time together to narrow down the key risk factors. Yeah, but I would say stalking, suicide, and substance abuse.
Great, great. Great, thank you so much, Sandra. That was really helpful. Then the next spokesperson of the next room, please.
I'm not sure. I think it's us. I think we were a group 4.
Great.
I think pretty much everything is covered, but like we chose as like the primary factor, obviously like the the pattern of escalation, like with his behavior with his partner, how like the stalking behavior, how like it escalates within that and when to threats, and his mental health, but specifically his history of suicide is something that we focused on. And I think pretty much everything. Yeah, we also talked a bit about like his physical health needs are not being like he's not taking care of them like properly, especially like the situation like with his whatever brain condition it is. I don't remember the diagnosis, which he's not being treated properly for that. We talked about his substance misuse, the fact that he also doesn't have like any stability at all around him in terms of like he has no stable housing and no stable income. So obviously that is an escalate, like it will escalate the risk by default. And the fact that he has no like stable social network at all. And we talked also about his trauma. I think someone else mentioned that, like his childhood trauma. I might be forgetting anything. If I'm forgetting anything, people can just chip in. I don't remember.
That was
and
perfect. That
substance
was
abuse,
perfect.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, your analysis was really good. Thanks. Yes. And the last group, please.
I think all the ideas that came up in our group, they have been already told. I mean, we completely agree with all the factors you have been mentioning, and I mean, I would not like to repeat them again, but yeah, basically,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so then just to summarize, you have talked about more like individual, at the individual level, so risk factors at the individual level, like suicidal ideation, then his medical issue. Then you've talked about also attitudes towards dating, like domestic violence, his stalking behavior, obsessive behavior. You've also talked about substance use, the suicidal ideation. Then from a socio-economical point of view, he's unemployed, his economic instability. Then you have also talked about his level of engagement in the group, his lack of social network. So thank you so much for your analysis. That was really, really helpful and in detail. And now we're going to present you, please Manu, go to the next slide. Great. So some of the risk factors that we identified were also, as you said, emotional management, how he deals with negative emotions. That's also related to the trauma that you mentioned, his mental health issues, of course. So he's also high in impulsivity, and he has an aggressive communication. This information is also from the facilitators. They have more information because of the way he behaves in the group. He has also, again, poor anger control, substance use, as you said, low social support, as you said, previous criminal record. He has problems in the way he manages conflict, so the way he in conflict resolution. The current crisis situations with the partner, as group one said, and the other group also said, that he's thinking about coming back to live with the partner, and that he's one of the main persons, like support person. That's a really important risk factor. And then he experienced violence in childhood, so that's also another risk factor. So thank you so much for, again, and this is just for you to see how we thought about the risk factors, and I can see like there is a real connection considering what you said and what we've thought. So great, thank you. And now Manu, he's going to present.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So in order to address those factors, we have designed, or in research team, we have designed and we are implementing a project called Focus Intervention Protocols Addressing Perpetrators Risk Factors that is run by WWP. Our project is divided in 2 steps. So the aim of the first step was to identify the risk factors which hinder the process of change of the participants. We used a sample of 153 men co-mandated to a contextual program in Spain that is conducted in the University of Valencia. So the first phase of that step was like the facilitators identified the main risk factor of each participant during the motivational interviews. Then researchers conducted thematic analysis in order to identify the most prevalent risk factors in the whole sample. And finally, the risk factors were classified according to the ecological level. So the risk factors we identified in the whole participants were in the individual level: childhood, adolescence, violence and trauma, substance abuse, psychological maladjustment, deficient emotional management and coping strategies, and antisocial behavior delinquency. In the relational level, we found lack of interpersonal skills and conflicts in partner or family relationships. Then in the community level, we had the lack of a functional social support network, and social integration. And finally, in the sociocultural level, we had attitudes towards the use of violence, gender stereotypes, and beliefs underlying IPV. Other risk factors we had identified, but there are like a low frequency, were low educational level, prostitution consumption, and physical health problems. So those were like the whole factors we identified, but the most prevalent ones were, as happened in the real case we were analyzing and talking about, were the first one, deficient emotional management and coping strategies, then substance use, lack of interpersonal skills, then lack of a functional social support network, and finally, childhood, adolescence, violence, and trauma. So then we have our second step, that its aim was to design evidence-based intervention protocols that address the most prevalent risk factors that we had identified. So we designed 5 intervention protocols that corresponds to the main risk factors. And to talk about more or less its structure, each intervention protocol contains 5 different intervention strategies or adaptations, which were added to the standard intervention we are conducting in the contextual program. These intervention strategies are group activities during sessions, individual intersession activities, individual activities with a support person. The support person is a person from the participant social network with whom he has a pro-social relationship, and also who can help the participant in his process of change. Then we have infographics and also adaptation of activities and procedures we are conducting. Chris.
Great. So now we're going to the second activity. We will join in the same groups that we were before. And now the main aim of this activity is that you design an activity, or at least the structure, the script of the activity, to address the main risk factor identified. In this case, we have chosen emotional management, so how he deals with negative emotions. So the main aim is that you think about how you would conduct an activity to address these identified risk factors, right? And the activity will have the following format, also as Manuel has explained, that is linked to the kind of activities we do in our project, right? So there are 4 types of formats. And there are 5 rooms. So the third one will be done by 2 groups, right? So it will be room 1. You will have to follow the format of a group activity during the session. So you will have to design a group activity that is done during a perpetrator program during a session. It can be individual, but always shared with the group. So it is done in the group-based session, right? Then room 2, individual intersession activity. So that means that you will have to design an individual activity that the participant has to do between one session and the other. So like a homework activity, like an individual homework activity. Then room 3 and 4, you will have to design an individual activity with the support person. That's someone who the participant has chosen as their support person that is going to accompany them through all the process of the program, someone who they trust on. So you will have to design an individual activity that they do with their support person, right? That can be a friend or whoever. And then room 5 will have to design, or at least, as I was saying, the script of an infographics that is more like, did you know, that format. That means that you can present something that you would do in an infographic. For example, giving like psychoeducational content or divulgative content, for instance, about substance use. Imagine. So what is substance use, the impact on relationships, an infographic. So in this case, the risk factor you're going to work on is emotional management. And I think you can start now working on the activity.
Quick note. So we're running about 10 minutes late. So
okay.
We will, you've already opened the rooms, Nova. So we'll have 10 minutes in the rooms instead of 20, just so
Great.
People know.
Okay.
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 Yeah, everybody is back with us.
Great. So now we're going to do it the other way around. So room 5, could you please share which activity have you designed?
Well, we kind of went round in circles and we spoke about different exercises to help identify and manage emotions. Was kind of introducing an exercise that we do in Scotland called the Man's House. But what we actually thought would be really helpful is a discussion and an exercise around kind of self-calming. And shamefully, we kind of thought we could make up or plagiarize a video around the hand brain. So discussing the reptile brain and what, well, how that affects breathing, and just an exercise around that. Because a lot of the men that we work with, and it's the same as working with people in Australia and America just now, and we said all across, we've had kind of commonalities around men that just don't buy into self-canon and find it quite girly or airy-fairy. So having a discussion around the fact that Army Rangers use it and sportsmen use it, and then introducing the hand brain cartoon kind of infographic as a way of just helping them understand the science behind self-calming. So we're kind of shamelessly
So
just
nice.
from someone else, though.
Okay, thank you so much for your ideas. That was really really helpful for us and really smart. We are taking notes, so we have these ideas also. Great, thank you so much, Aya. Then room 4, please.
I think that is us. Does anyone? Oh, do you want to go ahead, Matthew, and explain what we discussed? Or
Yes, the activity you have designed.
I can do. We were activity with support person. We were speaking about the fact that perhaps with him and a lot of other people in these types of situations, they don't naturally have that particular support person available to them. So potentially that initially that role might have to be fulfilled by the intervention worker themselves, who could perhaps take them along to some kind of first session. We noticed that he'd mentioned wanting to do some kind of activity around health and perhaps sports. So perhaps facilitating him joining a session like that, just basically trying to increase his social network. Because as I say, he has none. He's got no social role models. We did also note that in one of the meetings, he seems to have formed an attachment to another group member. At the moment, it seems perhaps confined to being a little bit disruptive with the actual group. They were laughing and talking together at the back. However, we thought we might want to explore whether or not that was something that could be developed, and that relationship perhaps could be pro-social for him. Perhaps that person he's speaking to might have been a member of the group for a longer period of time. They might be able to he might be able to follow their lead in terms of what he'd already learnt. So yeah, it was either starting off doing some sort of meaningful activity with the support worker initially, facilitating that first meeting, or seeing if there was some kind of relationship that could be explored with this other group member.
That's a really good idea about his group member. Yeah, great, thank you so much. Then room 3.
That is Deborah, Elena, Yema, Jessica, and Rhiannon. This is room 3.
So basically, personally, I work with victims, so we really struggled in this exercise, especially since I've never heard of the support person, sort of. I had not come across it. However, we discussed perhaps the support person could be used as a means to explore role playing and de-escalation, alternative behaviors whenever he gets triggered, perhaps.
Yeah. Great. Yes, even the support person can be a good example to learn how to build relationships in a healthy way, to learn alternative behaviors to violence. Yeah, great, thank you so much. Then room 2.
Yes, in the context of emotional management, we were thinking that perhaps they could do a diary, or thinking about this functional analysis where they will be writing what they were thinking and what was the behavior, in which situation they did that behavior, and also how that perhaps undermines their own values, so that they also work on values, for instance, during the session. the value of being a good father, and which kind of negative emotions comes when I am with my daughter, and what is the behavior that I do. Also thinking about that they would be reflecting on alternative behaviors that they could have done instead of, for instance, if I'm angry and then I shout to the other person, what else could I do instead of doing that? And how this connects to the consequences and how this approached me to my own values. So if instead of shouting to my daughter, I tell her that I'm feeling angry at this moment and I need 5 minutes, would that bring you closer to your daughter and the relationship you want to foster with her, or would that bring you far away from it? So this kind of a reflection that they could do within the week and bring that to the session later and see how that went.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was really, really helpful. That seems to be like in line with the Good Lives model or the acceptance and commitment therapy approach,
Yes.
more or less, right?
Yes.
That's super nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was really helpful. And then room 1.
Yeah, we talked about different activities, but we went down like a practical route, a practical activity to get the participants to recognise early warning signs, their triggers in their body and emotions. So we came up with an exercise, called it the traffic light exercise, where you get the guys to think about the driving, approaching a set of traffic lights. You've got like 5 seconds between the lights changing from amber to red. You're asking the guys, are they stopping? Are they going through? Then you're asking the guys to analyse why they've come to that decision. And they can usually get quite a lot of 10, 12 different reasons as to why they've made that decision. So then you sort of like talking about when guys sort of like say, my anger just goes from 0 to 100, just like that. That's just me. That's just where I am. Then use this exercise to explain to them that you've made a decision based on 10 to 12 different thought processes going along in a very, very short space of time, which then alerts you to your body, your emotions, your triggers, your warning signs, to enable you to then take a step back and think about what your next course of action is going to be.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was also really creative and specific work also to work on conflict resolution, decision making, and also how to manage emotions, Yeah. So thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. Now Manu will show you just one example of one activity.
Yeah, returning to our project, it was planned to share you some examples of the different protocols, but we don't have enough time. But if you are interested on it, maybe you can write us an email. I think Anna will write down in the chat our emails to write several questions or whatever you're interested on it. So regarding the protocol that you were working on it, the difficulties in emotional management coping strategies, an example of individual activity with a super person we have designed and we are implementing is that the super person should record a situation in which the participant became nervous and how he handled it. And also an example of an adaptation of a group activity in that protocol is that the following questions on anger and masculinity are added to the document 4.1.1. How men versus women tend to express emotions, and how do men versus women tend to share them. There are like several examples of questions that the participants are thinking about. So, yeah, Christina.
Yeah, so just in the end, we want to conclude that matching interventions to participant risk level, we know from the literature that have been found effective in reducing recidivism rates and also improving other treatment outcomes. we've seen and we have experienced it also, that gathering specific risk factors information, so collecting the information on the risk factors, is really necessary, of course, to design protocols based on evidence on their participants' risks. We hope that the proposed guidelines will improve the quality of the perpetrator program, as it adheres also to the risk need responsibility approach. And this is particularly important given that tailoring intervention to participants' risk levels, as we've been commenting, has been shown to be effective in reducing recidivism rates and improving other treatment outcomes. So thank you very much. You gave us a lot of ideas. It was a pleasure to know your experiences, your professional experiences, your thoughts on the participant risk factors, your thoughts on the activities. That was really helpful for us. And we just want to open like a really quick space for you to have to say any comment or to ask any questions. And yes, so do you have any questions or comments?
We were actually so good on time that we now have 10 minutes, so just FYI. But there's already some hands up. I love it.
Yes, so yeah. I don't know who was the first one. Sandra, for instance.
Thanks. I'm curious, how do you comment that the risk factors that you identified, I think that you showed like 5, the most prevalent factors, that the percentages were not so high. If I remember correctly, it was like below 10% for substance abuse and something like that.
I can go
and there. That attitudes toward women were not identified, you know, even in the first 5, that it seems that even below 5% of men have this kind of attitudes. So I'm curious to understand how, did I understood this correctly, and how do you comment this?
Yeah, well, first, it's important to say that one participant obviously can have more than one factor. And maybe also we select the most prevalent factors that are not included in the structure of the intervention program. For example, the attitudes or beliefs about violence or intimate partner violence are already included in the intervention, and maybe we try to focus on those factors that are not enough included or work during the program. But also, I don't remember properly, but maybe the attitudes or beliefs were like 5 or 6 or 7%, maybe more or less.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the next one was Jesse, if you're still here, then Dean and Brian.
Thanks, Nora. Really great presentation. I think for a long time we've tried to identify if programs are effective, and I think this is really just telling that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's more which programs are going to work best for which populations. And along those lines, I was curious, I have a question and a comment. The question is, for identifying these risk factors, were you using a specific risk assessment instrument, or was it based on the general literature, what is shown to be risk factors related to DV?
Well, we use the SARA, you know, the spousal assault risk assessment, but these factors were identified by facilitators based on scientific evidence. Yes, and also, as Manu was saying, we focused on the ones we are analyzing, the ones that are not really a focus on the intervention, or they are, but we thought we need a specific treatment when the factor is identified as a really important risk factor. So yeah, I think, I don't know if I am answering your question, but we use the SARA. We also use information from the institution, penitentiary institutions. So we know if they have a previous criminal record, or if we can know information regarding that. And yeah,
That's awesome, because
that
I mean,
would
when you're looking at risk assessment instruments, that's general group risk, and you still have to tailor that to the individual based on their needs. The suggestion that I would have as a comment, so I'm from Colorado in the USA, and we use the R&R approach. Two important principles to the risk is, number one, you have to separate high risk and low risk populations, and I don't know if you guys are doing that. The reason why that's important is you don't want to have iatrogenic effects where you make the low risk population worse. And so, as an ethical mandate to do no harm, if we're mixing those two groups together, that can lead to damage. The other piece is that for those high risk populations, as you mentioned, they're going to need a different type of intensity of treatment. So we typically see them in treatment longer to address those co-occurring issues. And so generally, when we're talking about the level of dosage and intensity, it's going to be much longer than those low risk. So that's also why it's good to separate those two populations. So
yeah, thank you so much for your comment. The point is that would be the ideal thing to do, of course, but we cannot do that because the program is court mandated, and as I was saying, we have information from the institutions, like the penitentiary institutions, because they mandate the perpetrators to attend the program. But the point is that groups are already formed by them, so we cannot choose who is in the group or who is not. That's why we are designing specific protocols for each member, because we cannot separate them into different groups based on risk. That would be the point. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dean?
Thank you. I like your thinking of the model of risk need response, which means that you will try to tailor the response to the specific needs of your clients. But I wonder, how do you address the needs that are related to the environmental circumstances, like if people do not have a job or a place to stay, or really severe substance abuse problem or mental health issues and so forth. In the MARAC exercise, we saw how they deal with that, because they all come together and there's a housing authority, there's job and so forth. Do you have the capacity to do the same thing?
We can just recommend that they attend to a specific service. For instance, mental health service, a substance use service, like addiction treatment service. But we do not have the power to, I don't know, to mandate them to go to attend to any service.
Yes,
so
I understand
it's
that.
just a recommendation.
So I understand that. But then you actually are able to attend to the needs that are more at the individual level, like emotional regulation issues, attitudes, gendered relations, and so forth.
Yes. And now with the incorporation of this project, we are also approaching the support person. So the participant chooses one support person, and we are also interviewing with this person. So we have more information that we had before of his social network. So we are in contact with another person of his setting, of his social network. So that is helpful for us not to intervene only in the individual at the individual level, but also like a more social level. But still, we cannot really approach the level, like a sociocultural level, more than the attitudes or giving resources or encouraging the participants to go to attend anywhere. Or yes.
But then you have to have, or he has to have somebody in the social network that you can really recruit to do this. This guy Carlos did not have anyone.
When guys, we have specific like the protocol includes specific guidelines for these specific cases where they do not have anyone. One is, as other mates say here, like one person said here, another member of the group. That's a possibility. We of course we don't let that the person is the partner. Never, it cannot be the partner, but another person of the group, or we try to, it can be a family member. Now that we are doing it with for instance, one group, I can think of one participant that he has been telling the facilitators about one person that he I think it's his cousin or something, that he's improving his relationship. So they are trying to tell him, like, okay, that can be your support person, think about it. So yes, it's difficult when the participant doesn't have anyone, but still we are trying to figure it out.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to jump in really quickly, we're almost approaching the end of the workshop. No worry, Brian, we'll get to you. Give me a sec. So there's another question from Diane in the chat as well. And I've also shared the links to our feedback form. If you need to leave, please beforehand open this feedback and share your feedback with us on the conference, on the workshops. Additionally, I also shared the link to the feedback and socializing session, which is happening starting now. So if you want to join that, click that. It will ask you whether you want to leave the room, and then you say yes. But I would suggest, Christina, Manuel, if it's okay with you, that we take Brian's question and Diane's question from the chat, and anybody who has to leave, we're sorry to see you go, but please make use of those links that I shared in the chat. Brian?
I'll try and be very quick, and I don't want to sound critical. I want it to be more a note of caution, that the focus on, for the exercise, the focus on emotional regulation or emotional management and worrying about this man's conflict management or conflict resolution skills would probably cause me concern, because this is a very high risk perpetrator who is obviously very coercively controlling. So the threats and intimidation he's showing is revealing that in this relationship, this is not a matter of a relationship skill he needs to learn, but he actually wants to win. He wants to be the top dog in this relationship. It's not a matter of communication. He's communicating what he wants very, very clearly. So I'm just wondering how you manage to focus on this man's manipulation and his coercive control, rather than just seeing it as some kind of, communication deficit. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I know what you mean. Empathy is a really big component of our work in the perpetrator program. So that is really worked also with cognitive rehabilitation techniques, with other empathy techniques, and we also assess empathy in our assessment process. So this is something really important, because we do a lot of exercises for them to see how for they to reflect on themselves, like how aggressive they are. So when it is not a matter of expressing themselves, as you were saying, but a matter of being aggressive, being violent, or being yes, that's something we work in the perpetrator program. So that would be it's not exclusive, you know. We work on empathy, on building empathy. We work on them to recognize their aggressiveness, their anger, and we also make them learn how to deal with their negative emotions. So it's everything. It's complementary. I don't know if I'm Manu. I don't know if you want to say something else.
And also we have like individual spaces during the whole intervention when the facilitators can talk with the participant, and there are these individual interviews. The goal is to be aware of the way that the participant is their habits, their way that is maintaining his relationships, and be aware of those things. So also in the group intervention, but also in the individual session, we are working on those topics.
Thanks, Manuel. Thanks, Christina.
So I think Diane's question from the chat actually goes nicely with an issue that I felt Brian was raising a little bit. And this is a question: when you do the assessment of clients, can you say no if you feel that in your program you won't be able to work with the client?
Yeah, we only have like 3 exclusion criteria. That is severe mental health illness, severe substance abuse illness, and I forgot the third one.
Yes.
Physical,
so you
maybe.
Said
is it a traumatic brain injury?
Yes, yeah. That's one of the physical health conditions. Then that the person is really disruptive with the group.
Yeah, that one is the third. I forgot it.
Yes, but still we usually are really open. Is more like really specific cases where it's not possible. Manu, what were you saying?
Yeah, we prefer to work with those perpetrators that, for example, that they have a severe substance use problem, because the alternative is go to prison. So we prefer to maintain that perpetrators in the program and try to work with them at the point in order not to decline the participation, and because they go to prison if we do that.
Okay, we have to wrap it up here. Thank you to Christina and Manuel for the insight into your program, which is Programa Contexto at the University of Valencia. Yes, exactly. Here you can also see the email addresses. I shared again the links in the chat, so please give us feedback and join the session now. Exactly, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any follow-up thoughts or questions.